good evening. I'm Amy Kendall from the Maryville Cares CAN TV program here this evening, and just delighted to have a guest here. Our partner, the Assistant State's Attorney Eileen Bandari, is here to talk with us about the Community Justice Center program that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office has integrated into our Chicagoland community, particularly Chicago, to help our citizens on a multitude of support. And so we really felt that this was an ideal guest to join us. So thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
To be here with us to share some really good information as we're looking to the new school year starting, and many different changes are happening in our communities that are brightening up opportunities for families. And so Eileen is here to share some specifics about what they do to provide support to our community. So, why don't you share a little bit about an overview of the community support?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Amy. Well, the Community Justice Centers have been in the State's Attorney's Office for more than 20 years, and I'm lucky enough to be a supervisor of those centers, and we have 4 of them, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But the primary goal of the Community Justice Centers is to make sure that we have safe, healthy, and thriving communities. And we do that a number of ways through problem solving, crime prevention, and prosecution. So with the Community Justice Centers, we are actually within the community talking to our stakeholders, whether it's a nonprofit, community members, the police department, and trying to figure out ways to solve problems within each community. And the centers that we have, each community is unique. So not every problem is going to be the same on every block. And it just depends on what we're seeing as we adjust to making sure that our programming matches some of the needs that are out there.
Well, and I just want to say, being at the Maryville Crisis Nursery, you have been such an integral part of supporting what we're doing to share with the community. And we've been invited to many different resource fairs to let people know that this is a service, and we've met many different organizations through those events. So we just really appreciate that. And, let's dive into this a little bit. I know that you were nice enough to put some information together for us. So why don't you help us talk a little bit about the overall mission?
Well, the mission of the State's Attorney's Office is, to do justice in pursuit of thriving, healthy, and safe communities. And we are committed to making, Cook County safer, and that means working within the communities. And we have to collaborate with our office with a lot of different organizations. And as a prosecutor, we are going to court and prosecuting cases, but we have to do that with integrity, fairness, and accountability. But in the community justice centers, we are stationed particularly within communities in Cook County. We have a north, south, west, and central. And the way this partnership came about was looking at the data and partnering with the police departments as well as the communities and figuring out where there was a need. And so we are partnered by police districts. So we have the 19th and 20th districts. We have a CJC North, CJC South. That covers the 4th, 6th, and 22nd districts, as well as West, which is where I was currently assigned, the 15th, 25th, and the Oak Park Police Department. Those are the police districts we cover, as well as the 11th and 12th police districts in CJC Central, including the University of Illinois. So we are seeing a need for what they had different types of violence in those neighborhoods and different types of needs for different communities. So that's where we've been for the last about 20 years. And we continue to work with those communities in different ways.
Wow, and I like the bottom there where it says prevention, because that's so important, and that's part of what we're about at the Crisis Nursery, and problem solving. Let's get to the bottom of it, and then if need be to use the prosecution way of doing things. So let's talk a little bit about the community justice model.
So previously, the model was a little bit different. It's adjusted over the years, and currently what it is we concentrate prosecution efforts on reducing violent crimes. So many of the cases that we are taking, the prosecutors that are selecting cases from these particular police districts are regarding violent crimes that have happened in the community. We also use data-driven evidence to focus on which neighborhoods. Sometimes it's block by block. If there's a history of escalating violent behavior, we work with the people that have the information. It's the police department that have the feet on the ground. We also work with the violence interrupters, like an organization called ALSO, or the Institute for Nonviolence. Also bond court reform. That also is a different type of current our community justice model that we work with as well. And sometimes alternatives to prosecution or creative sentencing with an eye towards restorative justice. So we're looking for justice and not retribution. So sometimes some of the cases that we get, the Illinois Department of Correction sentence may not be the answer. We're not trying to put people in the system to be a revolving door. There might be a different solution for some of the cases or some of the crimes that we're seeing. If someone has a mental health issue, they're being called constantly. If they're bothering people or they're having an episode on a particular corner, getting arrested and then going into the system may not be the answer. So if we can get that person treatment, and that's why we work with stakeholders and other resources within the community, so that when the police department comes and presents us with something, we can say, well, maybe treatment here is going to be a better option than jail, because if that person goes to jail for a number of months, we'll return to the same place and you'll have the same problem. And so the state's attorney's office is, we are kind of reactive in terms that we come into play after arrest has happened. So the police have to intervene. There has to be an arrest before the case is brought to the state's attorney's office. So what we try to do with the problem solving and prevention is to bring resources to the community so that they're there ahead of time, so that we're not working on it at the back end, we're working on it on the front end. So some of the community outreach that we do business walks, community peace walks. We have a lot of resource events, as you can see, neighborhood meets and greets and block club events. But let me explain when I talk about community resource events. Some of that is having job fairs, bringing jobs to the community, giving or finding organizations that have resources to give jobs to people that we say have compromised or that have backgrounds in some of the communities that we work in. That's very important, because if someone has a background and they want to work, some jobs or some employers are not employing that. But if we find organizations that are willing to give those people a second chance, if we bring those organizations to the neighborhoods that we are working in and they are employed and gainfully employed, you're hoping that becomes a trajectory for them instead of going back to crime. So the community resource events, we have one coming up August 6th and August 24th. I believe August 24th is going to be a job resource fair in the West Side. But August 6th, we're doing something, it's a pop-up for young entrepreneurs. It's getting youth to set up a table to kind of sell their goods and their wares. And that's kind of a crime prevention and problem solving, because we're giving them the opportunity to show that they can rely on themselves to be part of their community, to rely on their community for this business, and we're giving them the space to do it and the confidence to be able to set up. So that's one of the things that we're working on at the Community Justice Center for the West Side.
Wow, that's really terrific. Out of curiosity, if you were a rising entrepreneur, how would you maybe connect with the state's attorney on that? Is that coming through the high schools or the colleges?
Well, in this particular event, we have so many community partners that we work with the Chicago Park District, with several of the neighborhood local high schools, with certain organizations that deal with youth, whether it's a sports program or like Passion First that deal with youth all the time. So we've connected with our community partners. We've given them our contact information to reach out to the youth that they're working with on a daily basis, whether it's a mentorship program, to let them know there's a youth resource pop-up fair August 6th. Come, have one of your students or sign up if they'd like to be there. And at the end, if you have my contact information, certainly you can send us an email and we'll reach back out if there's someone that would like to set up a table.
That's fantastic.
So again, when we talk about resources, that's the type of stuff we're trying to bring resources to the community, whether it's mental health, resources for domestic violence, all sorts of types of programs.
Well, and I think the idea of meets and greets is really kind of neat, and that's what I have always found about going to different events, because the more you get to know who your collaborators are when things do come up, it's much easier to kind of work that process to help everybody be really successful and get to the goal of what we're trying to achieve.
Right.
So that's really fantastic.
So part of our problem solving and is community concerns. So people will bring us community concerns. We have steering committee meetings once a month. We have community partners that are part of that. And we talk about what are the community concerns that they're seeing in particular areas. Sometimes it might be a block that has a number of shootings that happen that week, or over a period of time. So we might bring resources to that particular block. We might go there with the police department. We might go there with violence interrupters and bring resources to the neighbors on that block as well. And there might be faith-based organizations that will also come and talk to some of the residents on that block to try and see if there's a way. Some people are not ready to leave the lifestyle they're in, but we're always letting them know there's an opportunity and there's a way out. And so we also do troubled building seminar. People don't realize that if there's a particular building that's troubled, that's where all the arrests are happening, where all the people are congregating, we will contact the city on their behalf and start working on trying to, whatever the issue is, address it with the building owners. So there's what we call troubled buildings. We also give a lot of community concerns and problem solving revolves around human trafficking. We have a webinar coming up this Thursday on that. Domestic violence is, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is October. But I always say it's not just October. We do domestic violence awareness every month if we can, because it's a prevalent problem and it's definitely increased since COVID. And we also work with our gun crime strategies unit within our state's attorney's office. We deal with hate crimes, mental health issues, and consumer fraud. A lot of that is geared towards senior citizens. And then our street safety and robbery prevention, we are able to partner with a lot of our police officers of different departments and different districts, and they give safety tips. As much as they can.
Yeah, that's great. So do you ever attend like a CAPS meetings in certain neighborhoods?
Yes. So our community liaisons and our state's attorneys assigned to the unit, we frequent, depending on where we're assigned, attend the beat meetings that they have. They call the beat meetings. We go to those beat meetings, yes.
Yeah, no, that's where you kind of hear the day-to-day stuff that's happening.
Right, and you get to meet the people from the neighborhood and the concerned citizens, the ones that are showing up and taking the time out of their schedule. So a lot of times things happen in the neighborhood and then people wonder what to do. And so, a lot of it is to attend your beat meetings, attend those meetings, because you'll get the information not after something happens, but before. So part of the things that we also do besides the community concerns and problem solving is we have a lot of programs geared towards the youth. We go to schools, we do mock trials. Sometimes we present a trial in front of the students as if it was a real trial, as if you were in the courtroom. So one of us will act as a judge, we'll have the state's attorneys, we'll have a defense attorney. And depending on the age or the group, sometimes we'll create the mock trial where the students are actually the prosecutors. They're asking the questions.
Great.
And they're being the defense attorneys so that they get that experience as well. And the problems that we use is accountability, which is to teaching the youth about the actions that they take when they're with their friends, how they might end up being responsible. So we really want to give them the tools to understand what accountability means, as well as some domestic violence incidents. Other youth programs is a sexual assault awareness, which we do very close to prom season. There's a lot of consent issues. There's gang prevention, which is a big one that we like to put on, as well as educating kids on guns, conflict resolution, and guns on real life conversation. So we go into the schools a lot, and we are with the youth in many of the programs, or especially in the neighborhoods we're in, hoping for the schools to reach out and we can come in and give presentations as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think that the more hands-on it can be for an experience, they talk about experiential learning. I mean, that can be pretty profound on so many fronts. I mean, you may be setting up your future attorneys for your office.
We went to After Schools Matters last week with the 25th Police District, and we put 2 students, and I was ready. I mean, they were in high school, maybe 14, 15, and they were so good at being the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and it was kind of scripted, but they got a sense of what was happening, and you could just see it in their eyes. I was ready to hire. They were really good, and I was very impressed with them. So and that was what their interest was, and also we made sure that I gave them my card and said keep in touch, because you just never know when you are in front of young people what interest you can spark in them.
Well, you're planting a seed, and what a fantastic opportunity.
Yes.
So as they're in high school, and the many great universities and colleges in the area, and you're kind of setting the tone there. So I see here we have on the screen your contact information, so we'll leave that on for a minute as we're talking a little bit more about some of the resources that you have. I think one of the questions that I have had over the past is just keeping what's happening, And what I have found for myself and our organization is that now that we're part of a committee, your office is just really outstanding in terms of sending out flyers, letting people know what's going on or different opportunities, so that way we can integrate that pretty quickly out to members who might be a little bit more shy about, particularly because of COVID. Have you found that there's been an enhanced interest in getting emails to people? I just know from our standpoint, we've been recognizing that our families are, and probably because of their connection to schools and health providers, everything's kind of gotten more into email. And are you using that as a way to get to citizens?
I think so, and I mean, just anecdotally, I mean, a couple of years ago when you were in school, like you used to have the folder and all the flyers.
Yes,
We used to come home,
yes.
used to get flyers after flyers, now everything is these digital flyers. You get digital flyers, so we don't really have much of a printing anymore, which is kind of a good thing to have the digital flyers. You're saving a tree, but the digital flyers are helpful because you can get the information. There's links contained in those emails to register for events and where they're located, and you can get information on your phone a lot more than the paper. But as we work with our community members, it's important to get all that information out, and not only to be a resource. The Community Justice Center is a resource for the other people in the community. So for example, someone might call us and say, hey, we have somebody who's struggling with, like I had a case where someone was struggling getting diapers for their child, and we're like, okay, well, there's new moms in our neighborhood. You can go there and get diapers and whatnot, and get services and job training and things like that. So it's hopefully getting people on a path where if they're having issues with resources or success, we can put them on a path. So we're making sure or trying to put something in place where they're not going down in a pathway where they're ending up in the courtroom, right? Sometimes there's no way to account for that, but the more problem solving and resources we bring to the community, that's the hope, that you're bringing resources somewhere and people are following it, in the direction that they need to go. As I was saying earlier, the State's Attorney's Office, when it comes to crime, it is somewhat reactive, right? Mm-hmm. After the crime has been committed and the police do an investigation, and if they're able to make a determination of who committed the crime and they're able to gather the evidence, then they present it to the State's Attorney's Office, and then we get the case. So oftentimes there are so many victims out there that if their case has not gone through or there's not an arrest been made, we and our victim witness has not met that individual. But in the Community Justice Center, we are actually meeting people ahead of time before they enter the court system, whether it's a victim or just community members, and we're bringing them resources ahead of time. So typically I would not meet someone until after a case has been presented. Mm-hmm. And now being in the community, you get to meet people, and unfortunately sometimes meeting victims whose cases have not been solved, but you're also bringing them resources. There's a lot of trauma that is happening in these communities, and we are also bringing a lot of the mental health resources for people sometimes don't even realize that what they're experiencing is trauma. Whether it's children or adults, and making sure that they have those resources.
Yeah, I find that's a really important point, that I think sometimes when people are in crisis, when we're at the crisis nursery and somebody calls, as they're exploring what they may think they need, and as you take time to sort of process that with them, it really is about taking the time. And I think what's just really quite innovative is that the state's attorney, made a decision, as you said, 20 years ago, that we weren't just going to be on this end of this issue or this problem, because we need to be, right? But that really, if we can set the tone ahead of time by offering these different resources and feeling like you can be a trusted resource, then that just may make it easier, as if you do need other people to come forward regarding a crime, or it just allows a little bit more of an integrated approach than just solving the crime, which obviously we want that to happen, but
I think there's a lot of also maybe misunderstandings or misconceptions of what happens with cases, how it even proceeds through the system, whether they're misdemeanors or felonies. So just being able to be in a room with people to ask questions and for us to be able to give those answers. There's plenty of times that I've spoken to, I might have been at a resource table and someone come up and say, I have an issue with something that happened, and once you've explained, like, oh, that makes more sense to me. But a lot of people don't understand what happens to cases, how it travels through the system, or why something happened, or why something didn't happen. And so be able to be a resource like that in the community is also important as well, just to explain things in a different level, so people have an understanding of how the cases move through the system and what happens with them. I think also, especially for our domestic violence victims, a lot of people don't understand if even if they are deciding to proceed, that there is a lot of counseling and help available even for your loved ones. So sometimes when people are in a domestic violence situation, they're hesitant to call the police because they think maybe the only result is going to be jail. But some of the sentences that can happen out of domestic violence is domestic violence counseling, alcohol and drug treatment, as well as orders of protection as well. So if people understood that there's help out there, that they might be more willing to proceed on some of the cases.
Well, and I think, it's scary, right? I think that when we have had many women have their children stay at the crisis nursery, for example, who may have had to go to court, or maybe they're still trying to decide on what my next steps is, or to figure out a safety plan, and work with the domestic violence officer in their area. I think that recognizing that this process doesn't have to, it may feel like it's very overwhelming, because it is, but as you said, your office, among many other resources in Chicago, have really sort of opened their arms to the idea that it is a process, and it's not going to be a one-shot thing and everything's going to fall in line, that there may be different dynamics and different organizations that can help you put this together. And we want to know that, our young children who may be witnesses to these incidences, we can get some support for them, because that's also going to trickle down to their environments at daycare and at school. And, I think that it's a wonderful opportunity of what you're saying about education. Right. That some people, we just don't know, we didn't go to law school,
Right.
and the laws keep changing, or they may be in the midst of changing. And so that's where your expertise and the office's expertise can really be quite helpful.
Yes. So I think that bringing resources, bringing information, and dispelling some of the misconceptions people have about what happens with cases is very important, especially when it comes to domestic violence. You have people who think that if they go to the police, that they're the ones that are going to get in trouble. They don't realize that there's help out there, especially if people have questionable immigration statuses as well. That there's a lot of things that prevent people from seeking out help. So part of what we do at the Community Justice Center is to bring kind of this education, try to bring the resources and information to people. And, what we do with our community partners is, it's one thing to just kind of put on a webinar and have a presentation, you're not knowing who your target audience is or if they're actually viewing or you're reaching them. So by working with our target, to reach our target audience, we work with a lot of our community organizations, because they are already, servicing a lot of the people that we want them to get the information. Mm-hmm. And that's how we are partnering with a lot of the people in our organizations in the community, so that we can reach a target audience, so that they have the information that we have, especially, let's say, for our consumer fraud, especially during COVID. There was a lot of fraud going on with unemployment insurance, and senior citizens still. There's a lot of phone calls that are being made, and they prey on people, obviously, who they think that are most vulnerable. And sometimes that's our seniors, and sometimes that's, our immigrant population as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there, what is the best way for somebody to find out if it's fraud or not? Like, I don't know, do you have any quick tips right now?
One of the biggest quick tips, is no one should be calling you that you give them information over the phone. Like, if anyone calls me and wants to verify my date of birth, verify my social security number, verify information. If it's a legitimate source, like if it's my credit card company or my cable company, I will tell them I will call you back, and then I will call them directly and say, you guys are calling me. They should have a record of why they're reaching out to you. And then usually they'll be like, we didn't call you. So I would never give any of that information out, especially if I didn't place that phone call. I never give any information out over the phone to anyone, even if it sounds like it's legitimate. I will say, well, I'm not going to verify that. I don't know who you are. You can verify me another way, because if you have those secret questions and things like that. But I usually call the credit card company back myself with a number off the back of my card.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your reminder about that, because I think sometimes I wonder why they're asking me these three security questions, and you got to remember them, and you have different accounts, and it really is for our own safety and well-being.
Right. There's a lot of email scams, which is your card is being charged right now. If you don't click here, and then you're like, oh wait, I didn't make that. I want to click on here to make sure that it's not for me. And like the natural inclination is to fix a problem, so you click on a link. And once you do that, it's either a phishing scam to get all the information already on your computer, or you'll legitimately enter information and they end up getting your information anyway. So if it's fraud and they're getting it on my card, I can simply call the credit card company and say, this charge was fraud, and they will take it off, instead of reacting to something that you're receiving. So.
Yeah, no, that's really quite helpful, because it's a real challenge when we have so many different avenues for people to reach out to you. And so thanks for sharing that little tidbit there, because I think we all need these reminders.
Right.
We think we remember, and then things kind of come up, and we get distracted, and we think we're going to do something in a hurry.
Some of those emails look very legitimate. Even at work, sometimes we get work emails, and they're like, that person, that's not from someone at work. They look very legitimate. I remember it's like someone said, I'm sharing this file with you. I'm like, I don't know that person. Why are they sharing this file with me? And I'm like, I didn't click on it, and then it turned out to be not someone from our office or something. So, if it just doesn't seem right, you should just kind of don't click on links. I don't like to click on links in my emails at all.
No, that's some really good information. And as we slowly come to our to the end of our time together, are there any top three things that you can think that you would want our community to remember and to consider when they might need some information? Are they able to walk into a community center or community justice center? We can put your information back online, so that way the phone number's there, and there's an email there. Is there any other thoughts that you have to share?
Well, we do have our centers that are open right now. There's two, one in the 5000 block of Northwestern, and then there's one in Maxwell Street in Halsted. I believe 727 West Maxwell Street. That's our CJC Central, where you could walk in and have, if there's a question or something like that. You can also send an email if you have a question. We can try and figure out. Sometimes I actually spoke to a community member today, and whatever the issue was, I said, I may not be able to solve your problem. It may not be in our wheelhouse, or that's not something our office is, our prosecutor's office is supposed to be handling, so to speak. Like, let's say if it's eviction or something to that regard. I may not be the person, but maybe I can put you or point you in the right direction as to where you can go for help. I can give you a resource. So that's kind of what we're also, to be a resource for the community as well.
Yeah.
Especially legal, we can say, I can't file that for you. I can't even give you advice on it. But you can go to this landlord-tenant agency if you're having an issue with your landlord or whatnot. So we can be a resource as well.
Yeah, I just think as everybody's sort of spreading out their their needs. I mean, I think particularly families now, being able to consider what their priorities are and what's happening and how they're making decisions with their time, for their children. You mentioned earlier that, the neighborhood events that are going on, we want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable and know that there are very viable opportunities for you to learn some new things. I mean, that's our mottos. We're trying to learn something new every day.
Yes, right, absolutely.
And so we're just so thankful for your time here today, Aileen. I just can't thank you enough for your office, sharing this information with us here in the community. And, we welcome you all to have a good evening. Thank
you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.